DJ Cool Breeze.
Baby, why leave me all alone? And if it wasn't for the music, I don't know what I'd do. Yeah. Last night a DJ saved my life. Last night a DJ saved my life from a broken heart. Last night a DJ saved my life. Last night a DJ saved my life with a song. Hey, listen up to your local DJ. You better hear what he's got to say.
There's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? Right now. Right on. Right on. Everybody thinks we're at home. Oh, but who are they to judge us? Simply cause our hair is long. Oh, you know we've got to find. Bring some understanding here today. Oh, oh, oh. Pick it loud and pick it sound. Don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can see what's going on. Yeah, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on. Ooh. Right on, right on. Right on.
good evening. This is Valerie Bonner, and you're tuning in to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie. It's been quite an interesting day. So I want to start by giving a shout out to the Keenan Rankin Metro Detroit #1 chapter, the Disabled Veterans Memorial Hall. They've allowed us to come in and do a training this week for peer recovery coaches. I really, really, really appreciate that. And if you're a veteran and you're listening to the show on 88.1 FM, or if you're tuned in online at www.fm881whpr.com, go to the Keenan Rankin Chapter 1 Facebook page and like it. It's so many things they do over there for veterans, and you know I'm passionate about veterans. That's why I do a show dedicated to veterans once a month. Check them out. But Commander Evans and all of her staff, they really did a tremendous job for us today, and I know they will continue to do that for us for the rest of the week. So, this evening I have Ben Todd with me, and Ben has a show called It's Your City. And Ben talks a lot about corruption in cities, corruption within politicians, systems, etc. So we're going to have a good discussion about, do all lives really matter? Asking for a black kid in a cage. Say hello to my guest,
Hi,
Ben.
thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for obliging. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
I hope so.
The 13th Amendment in the United States abolished slavery, except for criminal activity. We know how long that was written, and we feel like things should have evolved by now. But it seems to me that this bondage is very familiar to slave days.
Yeah.
It's not much different to me. The way people are treated, the way they're beaten. So we've gone from whips to police tasers.
Yeah.
We've gone from hanging and lynching basically to just flat out shooting and killing. We've gone from when a black person commits a crime, we'll talk about it at the federal level and the level of corruption with mayors and things of that nature. They get an extreme amount of time. Like Kwame got enough years as if he killed a human being, right? And perhaps some would say, well, he did kill the city, and its reputation and things like that. But that's not.
There have been other mayors that haven't done very well.
Exactly.
In cities either.
And so I just feel like this statistic, U.S. has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners.
Yeah. It's disgusting, isn't it? And one of the things I think happens with the way the United States organizes society, obviously the United States organized it similar to how Great Britain did with common law and constitutions, separations of powers, and so forth. But the United States really wanted to be a capitalist country. And so our society, while we do have certain freedoms, there's a conflict between freedoms and capitalism. And the society obviously incentivizes people to get educations, find something that's a marketable skill, and be productive to the economy. But what happens, though, is people that maybe don't have the resources to educate themselves or to get into decent schools or don't have just poverty, people in poverty, it almost systemically causes them to be much more likely to go to prison. And what happens, I think, is the United States takes people that aren't doing things in the economy and they find ways to throw them into prison for very minor offenses that most people do anyways, like marijuana, for example.
Oh, my God. We won't go there. It seems like there should be a mass exodus of inmates over marijuana charges, especially now that marijuana is legal both recreationally and medicinally. But I can hear someone saying, well, it wasn't legal at the time that we locked them up, or whatever. It's because there's a lot of money being made. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay. Watch that.
Really?
And you will see behind the scenes, there's this organization that a lot of people were a part of, or entities like Walmart, etc. But when they start being exposed about how much money they were making off the prison system with apps like JPay and all of these other
wow.
things, and I get really ticked off
Yeah.
every time I go renew my license plates. And honestly, I was quite ignorant in not really thinking that prisoners or inmates made license plates. So I was
didn't know. Do they
communicating
do
with
that?
one. They actually do it. I was
Really?
communicating with someone, a family member that's an inmate, and he was really proud about. Well, that was an inmate. He's free now, and he was saying like, I'm going to get this job and I'm going to be working, and that's kind of cool because I'm on my way home, and I'll get used to getting up in the morning and making a couple of dollars and doing things other than what I used to do for the last 15 years or whatever the time was. I'll be making license plates. And so, we're writing, because I don't do JPay. I don't believe in them making that much money off of me. I know that game,
JPay.
right?
Can you tell us what JPay is?
So JPay is an app where you can email, send pictures, and all of that. It's almost like texting and communicating with the person through that particular app. And if I'm not mistaken, I have not used it, you can also talk to them. You load your money onto this system, and then they can send you pictures, emails, and make phone calls, etc. to you for extreme amount of money.
Oh, wow.
And so that's backed by some large corporations.
Yeah.
So when he told me, I wrote him back and I was like, ha ha ha, I thought that was just a joke about the inmates writing, making the license plates. And when
I thought
he
that
told
was
me,
too.
It is not a joke.
Really?
So they're in there making them for a couple of dollars a day. And then I'm paying almost $200 and something for each one of my vehicles when I renew my plates. What is that about? They're making uniforms.
That's
They're
awful.
in there sewing and making uniforms. They have production plants. They're making things that we use every day.
Really? I never knew this. This is new information that I actually did not know.
And it's reprehensible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's reprehensible.
It's
I can see you're just stunned by it.
I'm a little taken back. I never knew that.
Yes.
And I mean, I do know America has a huge percentage. What percentage of the prison population does America hold? Do you know the stats on that?
No.
They have
No.
the world's largest prison
We
population.
do,
by far.
25%.
Yeah, so 25%. But we make up 5% of the world's population, maybe even less than that.
Yes, that's the stat
That's
I have.
disgusting. How can you consider yourself a free country if you're locking up 1% of your people?
Well, we're not really free.
Yeah.
And as I say, the tables have not really turned, right? Slavery just looks different,
Yeah.
right? And we're talking about the children at this time. So what sparked this show topic was the fact that I read about a judge in Pennsylvania. I have him here. And he just got sentenced to 28 years. Judge Mark Civarella was ordered by a federal judge in Pennsylvania to pay $1 million in restitution and serve 28 years in prison after being convicted for a scheme to make millions off of unjustly incarcerating young African American males at a very high percentage.
Wait.
So because the prison is privatized, they talked about a lot of
Yeah,
this
yeah.
prisons being privatized. So if
He's getting a kickback.
he's getting a kickback for every kid that he's sentenced to that facility.
And it was multi-million dollars, and yet he only has to pay $1 million?
Yes. And he said that he admitted to the fact that, yes, I did get money from that institution, but not for that. Okay, well, what did you get it for? I mean, you
Yeah.
might as well just come clean now,
Yeah.
buddy.
Well,
So this brings me to the point that I agreed we were going to discuss on this show. The failed jail project in Detroit.
Yeah.
because they do make millions of dollars off of it, off of a prison or a jail. Why do you think that particular thing happened
But the failed jail?
in Detroit?
Well, what happens, I think, I dealt with a show in Toledo, and we're actually going to restart that show on top of this show that we have, It's Your City. But in Toledo, they wanted to build America's most expensive jail. We exposed the fact that it actually was America's most expensive jail based on cost per square foot and cost per bed. What it is, a lot of times governments, I think, are connected with unions, labor unions. And labor unions, while they do benefit people, they're just like any other institution. They can be corrupted. And so labor unions historically, and I'm not claiming, I don't know any inside information about what the purpose of Detroit's jail was, but a lot of times they're used for laundering money. It's a great way to launder money is the labor union.
Wow.
And so what happened with Detroit's failed jail is they were working on it, and it was $90 million over budget already, and they needed more. And then all of a sudden there were, I think, 3 corruption indictments from the county government officials, and the jail project ended. So now the city of Detroit and the county decided to have this marvelous idea. They're going to take that jail, demolish it, and they're going to give that property to Dan Gilbert, who's the billionaire Quicken Loans owner. And he's going to take that and build a soccer stadium. And then they're going to give him $500 million, I believe, or so.
In tax incentives?
No, not actually in tax incentives, but they're going to give him $500 million to build his own jail. I'm not even kidding.
He's going to build his own jail.
For the city, yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes, what a great guy. I think it's like allowing the fox to guard the hen house in that case. You know what I mean? Because, obviously, he's a businessman, and Detroit's allowing him to do tons of business. And he is getting filthy rich thanks to them. Filthy. His net worth has increased tremendously since Duggan's kind of allowed him to do whatever he wants. And that's kind of, I don't know, my perspective on my show, it's our take that Detroit is almost a lot like a cronyist empire. It's not really a capitalist problem. It's cronyism, and then it's almost like city control and socialism on the other end, where like they don't allow people outside of the downtown areas to start their own businesses very easily. And so that's kind of the vibe we're getting, and based on the data, it just stares us in the face. But anyways, I'm sorry. I know we're talking about jails.
That's okay. No.
And
And you're fine. That is a perfect segue into when you brought this back to the community. It's the people that are in the community that are populating these jails.
yeah.
And so the argument is, well, the jails are full, so we need to build more. We're going to build a bigger, more effective one because we're growing at these astronomical rates of incarceration that we need more facilities. Couldn't you put that money? It takes about $32,000 a year to incarcerate someone.
35,000.
35?
You can put somebody through college for
You
like
could.
a quarter of that.
And so here's my kick on that. If you switched it, because to educate a child in our school system, you get about $7,800 last I checked per child.
Oh my God.
So if you flipped it and you gave each child $35,000 to be educated in our school system, and you use the $7,800 for inmates, and not saying I want to diminish the quality of life for anyone that's in jail, but I'm sure they can run it effectively if they cut out a lot of fluff. Then you're right. We could put kids through colleges. We probably wouldn't have to have the need for all of these title programs and everything else. However, I remember your show about the hand in the cookie jar that we did together, the hand in the cookie jar in the school system's funding. So that might be even more attractive to someone if it was all of that. But what I am saying is they're building these jails at a rapid rate. I also read somewhere, and I didn't dig very deeply for this stat, but they're looking at rates of the third grade readers to see how many
Yes.
prisons they should build. So we're going to go to break right now. And when we come back, we will have a discussion about that. You're listening to 88.1 WHPR, Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. And we'll be back.
I'm just trying to do the best that I can as a strong black man. Yeah. Here I stand as a strong black man, having done all I can to please my fellow man. I don't understand why that knife is in your hand. After doing all I can as a strong black man, I'm gonna take my stand as a black man. I will do the best that I can as a black man. I stand on my own as a black man. I'm gonna sing my song. Oh, this is me. So hear my plea. I'm a young black man, down on my knees. I say this world is wrong, and we don't have too long. I'm gonna take this stand as a strong black man. I feel the rain falling down on me. If you could see what's on my mind, oh, you will see. Everyone would be more kind. Everyone would be happy. I'm gonna keep on my goal. I won't let it go. As a black man, gonna take my stand. As a black man, I'ma do the best that I can. Oh, as a black man, I stand on my own. As a black man, I'm gonna sing my song. Sometimes I gotta move. Gotta press my way through. Gotta press my way through. No, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, 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 no. Yeah. Oh.
You're watching and listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie. The song you just heard was As a Black Man, and that song was written by my cousin, Millard Thomas, Run of the Mill Productions, who also does one of the jingles for Black Coffee. It talks about all of the struggles of a black man and what he goes through. But let's revert back to before he becomes a man.
Mm-hmm.
I had 120 inmates in a prison. I was doing a prisoner reentry program. And when I aggregated the data down, I found that their troubles began in between grades 3 and 6.
Wow.
And so they started getting high levels of suspension, high rates, even some expulsion,
Really?
getting into a lot of trouble around that age. This particular group, I'm not a epidemiologist or statistician, but I do look at the data that I collect.
Yeah.
So out of 120 inmates, about 90% of them, their troubles started in between grades 3 and 6.
Wow.
Now I do know from having a charter school that I co-founded and ran for 17 years that from kindergarten to 3rd grade you learn to read. And from 3rd grade and beyond you read to learn. So when I was reading one day and I saw that it was determined how many prisons we need by 3rd grade reading levels,
Wow.
I was flabbergasted because it made me think about the true theory, what I said, from kindergarten to 3rd grade, you learn to read. From 3rd grade beyond, you read to learn.
Yeah.
So you should have a mastery of that.
3rd grade reading levels.
Oh,
that's
let me floor
that's
you. Hold
insane.
on to your seat. Let me tell you the rest of it. So now, in the state of Michigan, I don't know if you've heard that if a child cannot read by 3rd grade, they're going to hold that child back.
Really?
I'm not in disagreement with that because of all of the aforementioned things that I said prior to this. But it also confirms that perhaps what I read and what I was thinking is true. So instead of
So somebody else noticed it too.
someone else noticed it too. Right.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the federal government and state government was having a difficult time monitoring the prisons and keeping them up. So if we privatize it, it would be less abusive, less repulsive, more reformative, and things of that nature. The data doesn't show that.
Really?
It's not any better. Now, they might be a little cleaner and less deplorable because they're new, but the treatment and things of that nature. I have a family member right now that is wrongfully incarcerated. But as we're working with the Innocence Project, and we'll be doing a show and they'll be here, working with them to get him out, he has developed cancer in the thyroid and another part of his body. They moved him from a medical facility in Bunton where he could have gotten treatment right away to another prison that looks like Hogan's Heroes. I don't know if you ever watched that show. I've never been to it
I've heard
and
of it.
visited him. It looks like something that came from a third world country or
Really?
something. It looks horrific. And then I spoke to him because we will be doing a show on wrongful incarceration. I will be taping some of our conversations so he can tell his story himself. But he said he even hurt his toe in there. And it bled for about 30 minutes. And they gave him a Band-Aid.
Wow. That's.
I don't
How
think
did
they
he not
care.
pass out from like
I
losing
don't
that much blood for 30 minutes?
think they care. So
Yeah.
they're locking our kids up. The juvenile detention centers are getting bad. I don't know if you've ever heard of Khalif Browder. Have you heard of the
No.
Khalif? So Khalif Browder lived in the Bronx, New York. I don't know if you remember they implemented that stop and frisk law. So he's walking home and he has a backpack. It appeared that someone said a backpack was stolen from somewhere. So the police stopped and frisked him. He's 16. They take him to jail to ask him a bunch of questions. He went willingly with, I'm sure, a high level of anxiety because you see all of these other people getting choked out, killed, shot. So I'm sure he's extremely nervous. But they were like, don't worry, just come down to the station. We're going to ask you a few questions. He thought he was going home. He spent 3 years in Rikers Island.
What?
3 years being
Really?
tied in
How-
Rikers Island for a backpack
That he didn't even steal.
that he didn't even
Did he sue? I mean,
steal.
you need to sue over
Oh,
that. That's insane.
Well, hold on a minute. So they finally released him, But that hadn't stopped the rapes and everything else that happened. It's on Netflix, the Khalif Browder story. My listeners, please watch it. He had became so conditioned when he came home. His mom said he walked in a rectangle because that was like the size of his cell, because he had become so
Wow.
conditioned to that. And I'm sure mentally ill, depression, and everything that goes along with it. He would just walk in a rectangle and eventually completed suicide.
Oh,
He killed himself. And they awarded his family $3.3 million.
nothing. There's nothing to. I mean, that they deserve 3.3 at least, but like you can't take away that life. You know what I mean? That's tragic. And when you hear horror stories like this, it makes me think: is our country even that free? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, because I mean, we can't have a two-tiered system of justice. It's just, I mean, how do people function? How are you going to play, like, if society operates under a system of rules, and the only way it's going to function effectively is if the rules are equal for everyone. It's an equal playing field, and people feel like they have a fair opportunity at success. Obviously, not everybody feels that way sometimes, but when you have these discrepancies regarding criminal justice, just criminal justice alone, I don't understand how people aren't even more enraged. That's outrageous, you know?
We get
That's-
enraged when I say we, those of us that are in the Black community, that on a weekly basis, whether it's happening in my hometown of Inkster or other communities around the country, we're losing people at an alarming rate. Our lives don't have any value. Police can just shoot us in the back. I saw on a video where a young lady was arrested and the officer went in the cell and raped her on the camera inside of the cell at the police station.
How do you think he was? That's
He probably felt like some white privilege was in play. Why would you do that on camera at your job,
yeah.
knowing that they can play the tape back? Didn't cover the camera up or
I wonder if he's
anything.
gotten away with that before.
Probably.
You know, like people don't just commit things so callously unless they might have been a little bit more secretive before, and then they just kind of got sloppy. But that's awful. It's
The playing field is not level.
yeah.
The playing field will never be level. I feel like there's no
Why do you
system-
think it'll never be level?
because as long as people think they're entitled to white privilege and all of these other things, the playing field won't be level until we have and we meaning the Black race or minority races have get a level of economic empowerment
Yeah.
and come together. And it's interesting you say this because I feel like, I don't know if you heard of Black Wall Street. There was a time where the Black community had everything that it needed. We were thriving, Black millionaires and all of that. We were thriving. This is my opinion, but integration helped us integrate with other communities and gave us opportunity, but I feel like it divided us too. Because some people made it out, some people remained, and there is that division. Like, I made it out, you get out on your own. There's not a lot of us that go back and pull the others along for good reason, and then some for just childish reasons. But I feel that integration segregated us, but desegregated us when it came to society, right? We can go wherever we wanted, but I believe it divided our race. And now we barely can find anything that we need in the Black community. We have beauty shops and barber shops and funeral homes that's owned by us. The beauty supply, I think we still have one in Inkster, Mr. Days, but it's not thriving like a Sally's, and perhaps it should be from being in business since I was in high school, right? can't compete with the Sally's or the larger beauty supplies, and most of them that come into the city, even when you get your nails done,
Yeah.
I don't get them done by someone from my race.
Yeah, I honestly, like, being a white male myself, sometimes you don't think about all those different dynamics, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But that's fascinating. What do you think is the way to solve something like this, though? I mean, obviously, integration is important, but also having your own identity is important too, and keeping your culture together is important. So how do you combine those two and allow the benefits for both aspects to come through?
Well, I feel, excuse me, we have some national organizations, NAACP, and some of these other organizations, and people always get frustrated with me, but I feel like either they've served their purpose,
Mhm.
and we shelve those, and we come up with something greater later that's
Yeah.
going to work for us, right?
Uh-huh.
Or we revitalize it. Where are the Martin Luther Kings? Where are the Angela Davises? Where are the Malcolm X's? Where did we groom any future leaders?
That's an
Number
interesting
one.
point. Yeah.
And I know they're there, but when we see a kid that has a little bit of aggression or maybe is a little bit stubborn, to me, those are leadership skills that need to be redirected.
Yes, that's very true.
Right?
I, as a problem child myself, I think a lot of those characteristics I had were actually leadership skills.
They were leadership skills that need to be redirected.
I
Number
love that.
one.
I love that saying.
Number two, the way you and I really vibe offline when we're talking,
Yeah.
and we're doing the same here, but we have some really good impromptu conversations. We're on the phone for a long
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Ben is white. I'm gonna let y'all see.
Hi.
So why did I do that? Because the original NAACP wasn't comprised of all black people.
Yeah,
There's white
that's right.
people in it.
Yeah.
We need to come together. Stop thinking that everything has to be all black.
Mhm.
It can be white and be all right. Long as they understand,
Yeah.
right? To me, I don't care what color the people are.
Yeah.
I care about, do they understand the cause? Where is your heart at?
Mhm.
We can't do this alone.
Mhm.
We need the help of other people
Yeah.
that are on the same page.
Mhm.
So you go to a Black Caucus meeting, it should be some white people in there. Just because it's the Black Caucus doesn't
Yeah.
mean it needs to be all black people. And I had a conversation
there's a lot of
with
people
my
that
friend
support-
about that. Absolutely. Well, let white people come in. Let Chinese people come
Yeah.
in. Let Asians and Indians and all
Yeah.
ethnicities, as long as we are on the same page, driving the same mission forward, I don't care what color you are.
That's an interesting perspective. But then, what about losing the identity, though? Black culture. It's very important. You were saying to have your own identity. Do you feel that if you'd invite too many other people of different ethnic groups in, would that help you, or would that cause the group to feel less unified in terms of black culture?
Interesting, because a part of the conversation was that, because we were talking about black caucuses and things of that nature, and I said, well, how many white people are in it?
Yeah.
And they said, then it wouldn't be the Black Caucus. Yes, it would. Because that's where the cultural competency and teachable moments come to play. Because it's not about what color your skin is. It's about if you're down with me for wrongful convictions. If you're down with me because federal prisons, you know that they are not, privatized prisons are not treating inmates any better than a federal prison. Do you believe that? If you believe that, let's advocate for change.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of the Generation Xers and beyond, they kind of got it together. You can see them commingling a little bit more
Yeah.
with one another. They don't care about if you're all black or all
Yeah.
white. They're just coming together for the cause.
Mhm.
And I think that that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
There's another organization I used to be a part of, the Masons.
You
and
were a
the
Mason?
Eastern Stars. Well, I wasn't a Mason because you have to be a man, but
Yeah,
I was
that's
an
right.
Eastern Star, right?
What's that? That's the
That's
female.
the female affiliate to
Okay,
that, right?
yeah.
And so I'm a go-getter. Like, I'm going to take this to the top. They have a Shriners Hospital, and that's part of, like, a Masonic order, right? So I'm like, well, we can go and fraternize with them, and we can do it. Oh, the white Masons don't allow black ones in their organization. Like, we do our things separately. What? And we're in here talking about all of these principles and Bible and stuff. What the heck is going on? If you don't let me out
Yeah.
of here, take your white uniform back, and I'm out.
Yeah.
Because I can't preach harmony, love, joy, and all of this stuff. But then you're telling me I don't even, we keep these things separate.
Mhm.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm not
interesting.
mad at anybody that's in it and what they're doing, but just don't ask me to do it because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel like there's some levels of cultural competency that are involved.
Mm-hmm.
The Baha'i religion. Have you heard of the Baha'i religion?
No, what is that?
So I can't really go in depth with it, but it's just about love, peace, and harmony with some religious tones.
Oh, really?
When you go to a Baha'i service, I had a friend that was Baha'i. They have a cultural dinner. So if there are black people in there, they're going to have a soul food Baha'i dinner.
Mm-hmm.
If there are Asians, you're going to have Mandarin food. Bless you, I needed
Sorry.
to that's okay. But they embrace every culture that is in that Baha'i chapter by doing cultural competency. And not only do you eat the food, you learn about the culture. The African dinner, they have African drummers come in and they talk about African principles and all of those type of things. And then you eat and you break bread together eating African cuisine.
Really?
It's really cool. I haven't been to a meeting in a while, but it's something really cool to experience because they kind of get it. Like,
Yeah.
we all worship in a higher power,
Mm-hmm.
but we're all different. But people always seem to come together over food, right? So they get
That's
all of the
true.
principles.
Yeah.
Let me teach you about my culture, my ethnicity. We're going to break bread together. And when you walk away, whether you're Baha'i or not, you understand them better.
Yeah. That's interesting. Baha'i. I'll have
Baha'i.
to check that out.
Bahai, Baha'i.
Baha'i.
And I go to, when I visit with friends, I go to the one in Ypsilanti.
Okay.
And it's a center. There's no steeple and,
Yeah.
no thermometer. We selling chicken dinners because we're going to get a roof, or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
a nice facility that they put together.
It's a peaceful religion
It's a
without
peaceful
without
religion.
the worship of a god, right?
They do worship a God.
Oh, they do?
They do,
Okay.
but they don't have like this doctrine that is always coming at you,
Yeah.
and molding and shaping you in one form or another. Just, do you believe in a higher power? Do you believe in love for everyone?
Yeah.
Do you believe in humanity, peace, harmony, love?
Mm-hmm.
It's built off those principles, but they do still pray, to a higher power. That higher power is God.
Yeah.
But all of the fluff is out of it.
Oh, really?
Right, and you just have this experience.
So they don't have a catechism?
No,
I'm
they
teasing.
don't. And the leaders are not put on this pedestal, and the people are down here. Whoever that subject matter expert is at that particular time is leading the service, and they
Really?
groom everyone to do that. They have a library where you can take out books and things of that nature. So it's really cool. While we're on the
Check that
subject of religion, there are a lot of youth, perhaps they need something, and I'm not saying church or religion or whatever, but they need something
Mhm.
that's going to ground them on the outside.
Mhm.
I know that once a person is incarcerated, if they so choose, they can become a part of the Nation of Islam.
But like,
Jehovah Witness or whatever, they can bond to something and they come together. If they're all from a certain community, like the people who are all from Inkster, like, it's almost like a little clique, right? And they stick together. If we can get that mentality of sticking together on the outside a little bit more than once I'm locked down, I got you.
yeah,
It would be a little bit different.
that's
to
interesting.
me.
Well, the United States is made up about 20% non-religious people, though. And this is what I think. And it's a fascinating dilemma. So, non-religious people make up 20% of the U.S. population, but only 1% of the prison population or so. So I've always wondered, maybe non-religious people, because they think I only have this earth, are less likely to engage in risky behavior that could allow them to go to prison. And I've always wondered if maybe that had something to do with their behavior, because I always found that was so fascinating that only 1% of people were non-religious in prison.
Interesting. And it could be that, that forgiveness factor for whatever you do, you're still forgiven.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a whole show that we probably need to explore.
Yeah, it's weird. And I'm hoping I got that statistic right, but I'm pretty sure.
That's okay. Whether it's that accurate or not, the concept.
Yeah, it's disproportionately, non-religious people are very underrepresented in prison. You don't see a non-religious person a lot of times committing suicide, for example, which I find really interesting, because if non-religious people don't believe in heaven or hell, and usually a lot of religions say you go to hell if you commit suicide, then maybe they'd be more inclined to commit suicide, but actually they're less. And I find that peculiar and interesting and kind of fascinating, and studying their behaviors. And so sometimes it makes me think. I try to compare non-religious people's statistics versus religious people's statistics, because I do believe sometimes religion can get in the way of people's decision making.
It may. I know I look at the church where I congregate and I'm a member of, and the young people have less interest in becoming involved. We had a youth choir, and it used to be like full of youth and teenagers and college students and stuff, and now it's barely anyone there. And I'm wondering if two things: you made me go to church my whole life every time the door swang open, so now that I can make my own decisions, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Or has religion lost its value, or organized religion? Because I'm not saying they don't believe.
I think it's organized religion that's really losing its value. Studies are showing people are attending church less, but they still pray more. And so what does that mean, other than they still believe oftentimes, but they don't do the institutionalized things? And I think that might be, in a lot of ways, failures of American Christian leadership to present people a positive vision for people. Because I think people like Pat Robertson, don't know what your opinions are on him, but he made a lot of prophecies that turned out to be completely inaccurate. And that hurt his credibility. George W. Bush said God chose him to be president. And, yeah.
I was trying to hold back the laughter on the whole Pat Robertson thing. Now you got me buzzing. But okay.
But, like, there's questions of that, because we saw, President Bush did not have a smooth presidency. Whether people like him or not, it wasn't very smooth. And his incitement of God all the time, I think, really made people question leadership of Christian organizations and Christian churches. But I don't think necessarily faith is under attack as much as leadership of faith is under attack.
And I believe that maybe that's why youth are making the decisions that they're making. So you asked a question earlier, what could we do differently?
Yeah.
What do you feel can be done differently? I just don't feel that any system was made or designed for black people except for the prison system.
Yeah.
I think the rest of them, we learn to navigate our way through. Some of us make it and some of us don't.
Well, the Rockefeller laws, I believe they're the Rockefeller laws, right, that made much stricter prison sentences than other countries have. Because what America realizes, the vast majority of crimes that happen are usually repeat crimes. They're not the first time somebody committed an offense, but it's the first time they got caught. So what they do is they give stiff prison sentences to people. And they have police that overpopulate areas where a lot of minorities happen to live,
Absolutely.
which oftentimes happen to be impoverished areas. And so then you're giving a bunch of people who might have only been committing a crime one time. And I'm sure we've all committed something that if we were caught for, we might have gone and been heavily punished for. I'm not going to say I have, but yes, I have.
I've took supplies from my job. That's stealing, right?
I tried marijuana. I mean, we've all done that. And what happens, though, is it's enforced heavily, just unbelievably heavily, in urban areas, in areas with lots of poverty. And then in areas without poverty, in areas that are considered affluent, they let people be.
Mm-hmm.
And unless there's a violent crime, they don't do much. What I think would be better is just having consistent laws for everybody. Don't target certain areas. Make quotas so you can say, okay, a lot of violent crimes happen here. Focus on violent crimes. One of the problems with that, though, is something called the broken glass theory, which is police at one time only focused on prosecuting violent crimes. But then what happened is all these petty crimes that people got away with led to more violent crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to find a way to prevent this two-tiered system of justice. It's unbelievably two-tiered. I mean, there's so much data, it just stares you straight in the face. And it's undoubtable. But they need to fix it. There needs to be reforms. You need to figure out how you can reduce the prison population without damaging the laws. And I think it requires a new look at certain laws and the excessiveness and the stupidity of some laws.
So Kim Kardashian can go visit a couple of more prisoners and free them. You see, she's been keeping people all exonerated.
Yeah, I know.
Get out of here with
I
that.
never understood, like, Kim Kardashian doesn't seem like a civil rights activist to me.
And
Like,
she's not.
I mean,
As
a
black as
reality
she's
star.
gonna get as the men she messes with, that is it. She does not have a black card. Okay.
Yeah, okay, okay.
So we can clear that up right now.
Yeah.
So as we prepare to close, I guess we're getting close to that time. I appreciate you being so open and honest.
I appreciate
About
being on your
that.
show. I like this. This is a fun conversation.
Yeah, and we need more people like you
Well, thank you.
that get it. Because you get it. You're just about obeying the law,
Mhm.
doing things the right way, and treating people fairly, systematically, whether it's at
Yeah.
government levels, in education, you're across the board. You're not targeting one area or trying to exploit one thing. You just want what's right.
Yeah.
And I think even if you and I came together, we would evoke positive change and
Yeah.
empower people, right? And that's what just needs to happen. So the right people need to come together. It doesn't matter if they're white and black or whatever color that they are. The right people that are on the same accord fighting for injustices and righteousness. And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. One of the things I think is fascinating is I was speaking to a lawyer friend of mine last week, I believe, and he was telling me, 99% of crimes don't get punished or something ridiculous, but it's only that small fraction that actually do get prosecuted. And instead of focusing on the poor and impoverished, why don't we look at crimes from the leadership? And you never think about it, but like one of the reasons why corruption happens is because people can get away with it most of the time. And even like in Detroit, we have Mayor Duggan and this demolition program. Obviously, some kind of crime had to have been committed, but it doesn't get prosecuted. That blows my mind. And I think maybe we should focus on leadership and prosecuting people committing corrupt actions and doing things that hurt the entire communities as opposed to focusing on nitpicking certain communities and going after them for minor offenses.
I'm so glad that you said that, and we might have to do a part 2 about this because that is exactly what happens. And the media also exploits certain areas with certain crimes or whatever.
Yeah.
This was spectacular,
Well, thank you. I love being on air.
but unfortunately, our time has ended. So, thank you for tuning in to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream with Valerie. I am extremely happy that my dear friend,
Hello.
Mr. Bid Todd, joined in with me today. And again, the goal of this show is not to spill the tea. And it's not to make you feel like you had a shot of cheap liquor. It's just to give you straight talk. That is it. We will see you next week. We're out of here.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. Na 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 na. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, girl. Just you and me. Wake up all the doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who suffer and who catch all the hair. But they don't have so very long before their judgment day. So won't you make them happy before they pass away? Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we could do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do